In 1995, Apogee Software made their entry into the first-person shooter genre with their cult classic title, Rise of the Triad, being developed by a team referring to themselves as the developers of Incredible Power. It was originally planned as Wolfenstein 3D Part 2 Rise of the Triad, an expansion pack to Wolf 3D, but was later dropped since id Software didn't want to draw the attention away from their next big game, known as Doom. And then afterwards, it was picked up again by Apogee Software, only to add god powers, dogs, ludicrous jibs, and really cool explosions. This was the result being what would be Rise of the Triad. It became what was one of the best old-school first-person shooter experiences of its time. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we fast forward to 2013. Introducing Rise of the Triad Redux, developed by Interceptor Entertainment and published by the legendary Apogee Software. This is basically a remake of the original game from 1995, using today's technology while adding a few new features and a few improvements. Now I for one could just review this describing its awesomeness, but this is DG Game Reviews, so we're gonna take a look at a little history on how this came to be. Interceptor Entertainment was a Danish video game developer founded in 2010 by Frederik Schreiber, based in Herning, Denmark. Upon assembling a world-class development team, they began work on what will be their first video game title, Duke Nukem 3D Reloaded, a remake of the original Duke 3D. Schreiber was eventually given a personal non-commercial license to the game upon contacting Gearbox Software for official permission to continue developing the game. However, upon completion of Duke Reloaded, Gearbox was showing concerns about whether or not the game will be allowed to see release due to the disappointing sales on Duke Nukem Forever. As a result, Interceptor was forced to put the game on an indefinite hold. Just then afterwards, Interceptor finally said, "Screw it, let's move on to something else," and thus having the idea to recreate one of the craziest old-school FPSs of all time, resulting in what would be the new Rise of the Triad. Though around the time of its release, Gearbox was still given the green light on Duke Reloaded to be released as a non-commercial product, so we can hope for the best on the Duke 3D remake. In the meantime though, we'll be looking at the new Rise of the Triad in detail. Upon starting the game, you have the option to create an account to store your game status online, or play offline if you lack a connection, or just don't feel like using the internet to synchronize your game data. However, creating an account is required for online multiplayer, so if you're one wanting to join online servers from somewhere out of the LAN party without an account, then tough luck. Of course there are some workarounds to bypass this, but I digress. Anyways, once you've decided what your heart desires, you're then greeted with the main menu where you can select single player, multiplayer, configure options, and quitting the game, like a quitter. Selecting single player will get you into the main campaign. Starting a new game will provide you with a difficulty selection on how ludicrous you want the game to be, followed by a character selection screen showing off the hunt members themselves. Each character is dependent on their stats including speed and endurance, so choose whichever one suits your ability. Once everything is in order, you'll then be greeted with a little introduction showing off the backstory of the game. The gist here is that a team of special operatives, known as the High-Risk United Nations Task Force, or HUNT, are sent in to investigate a deadly cult known as the Triad on San Nicolas Island. Upon investigation, they were soon spotted by patrols and their boat was destroyed before the HUNT could make their escape. After learning about the Triad's plans to take over Los Angeles, the team then decided that they have no choice but to go in with guns blazing. That's your story. If you're looking for more in-depth on that subject, then you're looking in the wrong place. Next, you'll be greeted with a map which shows your current location, being the episode and level you're currently on. Once everything's set, and after a few seconds of load time, you're then dropped right into the game, pistol in hand. As you would expect, the game plays out exactly like the original Rise of the Triad. The goal of the game is to kill any enemy that stands in your way, collect any required keys of any, and then reach the exit. Simple as that. You have your standard keyboard keys to move around, fire your weapons, and use objects such as switches. In addition, you also have other keys to use your knife and reload your weapons, which we will get to later. You also now have the ability to jump, unlike the original, which in a way would probably make sense in a modern old-school FPS remake. You'll also notice the graphics in this game, which do a great job recreating the original rot with fully detailed scenery, buildings, etc. Granted that it's not as superb as Crysis 3 or Metro Last Light, but still. However, that's obviously not what creates the game. What creates it is the awesome gameplay. It really captures the heart on what an FPS truly is. It's fast-paced first-person shooting action with ludicrous jibs, big guns, and really cool explosions. Yeah, really enough said about it. In addition, you also have the music, which is absolutely superb. Being recreated in heavy metal form by composer Andrew Holt, it just gets you in the mood for some serious adrenaline. Not only that, but it also has the option to play the classic tunes from the original Rise of the Triad too, if you're in a nostalgic mood. And it wouldn't be an FPS with some serious adrenaline without the game's weapons. Basically, you have all the weapons that make the return from the original. You start off with just a mere pistol, and then move up to dual pistols. And eventually you'll come across a machine gun to make things a bit easier. Then, you have the rocket weapons. You have the basic bazooka, which blows up enemies into ludicrous jibs, a firebomb which creates a dangerously spread out explosion, and the flame wall, which, as the name suggests, creates a flame wall, burning any enemy that is unfortunate enough to be in its path. The difference here is that they now have alternate firing modes, like the firebomb, which detonates the missile in flight, more or less, and the flame wall, which behaves like an explosive machine gun. And finally, you have your magic weapons, like the Dark Staff, which produces an instant beam disintegrating enemies on contact, and the freaking Excalibat, which acts as a melee attack and also shoots out green baseballs, charged up to its max to shoot a deadly spread shot, killing everything within its viewpoint. The difference here is that the rocket weapons and magic weapons now have their own slots, which makes sense. Otherwise you have to depend on one slot for all ballistics, aside from your pistol and machine gun. And the game wouldn't be without its power-ups. You have your returning power-ups like God Mode, which renders you invincible and enables you to shoot out an energy ball disintegrating everything in sight. And Dog Mode, which is like God Mode but transforms you into a dog, and enables you to rip apart every Triad in your path, and let out a tremendous howl, killing everything nearby instantly. The difference with this power-up though is that once you've howled, you are instantly transformed back into a human, so I suggest using it as a last resort. And then of course you have your power downs like Shrooms Mode, which puts you under the influence of psychedelic mushrooms.
Trip like fantastic, man.
And Elastomode, which bounces you all over the place.
You gotta be kidding. This is a power-up?
So unless if you don't mind getting high or bounced around, I suggest avoiding those. A couple of additional features that I want to point out are the knife and reloads. Knives are mainly used for cutting open nets to set yourself free from over-patrols, just like in the original, although now it is always in your possession throughout the game, and also doubles as a melee attack. Reloads are what you would expect, except that they serve no purpose but to just show off the cool animations on the guns themselves. Really, the reload system in this game is meant to be a joke. Not to mention the iron sight falls in the same category. While it is a bit useful, if you need a little close-up on things, it isn't really much of a necessity, since all of your shots are 100% accurate anyways. Another thing to point out is that once you've beaten a level, you have the option to go back and do the level again via the load game menu. That way you'll be able to find any secrets and items you may have missed in order to get a higher score, and 100% completion. So yeah, if you played the original Rise of the Triad, then you'll know exactly what to expect, as everything in this game sounds and looks exactly like the original. It's a remake which brings back the spirit of old school FPS using today's technology, and it is truly an awesome experience. Not to mention that this game has a really great sense of humor.
Guten Tag! Do it now! Girly man! Come on, right now! Come on! Do it now! Do it! Come on! Come on! Kill me! Guten Tag!
Yep, it pretty much speaks for itself. However, there are a few drawbacks that makes this one less than perfect. For one thing, where are the balls of the save game feature? Oh yeah, there is none. Instead, you have a checkpoint system. Now granted, I personally don't mind checkpoints in the game if done properly, but then you come to those stupid deaths that are just as aggravating. Having finally figuring out on how to get past one certain part that I'll otherwise have you killed instantly, you're then obliterated by what seems to be an angry mob of triads without even noticing, or even falling into a death pit before you can even reach the next checkpoint. Which brings me to the next part of this game, platforming. At first they don't seem too bad once you get the hang of it, but eventually you'll come to a part when the platforming sections just get a bit more complex and annoying, resulting in a bunch of unnecessary stupid deaths. Not to mention that the controls are a bit slippery. As normally, they are very good when it comes to adrenaline and just shooting the crap out of dudes, but when you have to get through these platforming sections, you have to be a bit precise on your movements. No matter what, your character moves a bit too fast to comprehend for these shenanigans. And I just hope that there's a fix that'll have the player the option to walk, so that platforming can at least be manageable. And finally, the levels. They are pretty linear to say the least. If for some reason you forgot or couldn't find any secrets in one area and then move on to the next only to find out that you can't go back, that can be a bit annoying if your one wanted to get 100% since you have to restart the entire level all over again just to get everything in that one area. I also want to point out that some people are experiencing performance issues right now. It seems that no matter how powerful the machine is, they basically get to certain points in the game where it would just come to a crawl. Thankfully, as of now, the performance issues seem to be minimized just a bit, and they'll look into optimizing it more in the future. But aside from those issues, once you get used to it, it's still an awesome experience. But that's just a single player of the game. You've also got multiplayer, consisting of good old deathmatch, team deathmatch, and capture the flag, complete with 5 multiplayer maps. Sadly though, there's no co-op, which would have been a great addition for this since there is high demand for it nowadays. But in any case, the multiplayer itself, oh my goodness, it is just stupidly crazy fun, and kinda reminiscent of games like Unreal Tournament. What? No.
Why?
Okay, it's just as satisfying as blowing up your friends with a firebomb. You just been firebombed! Do-do-do-do-do. Letting out an almighty howl as a dog to give them a taste of their own medicine. Gotcha!
Motherfucker!
And obliterating them with your trusty Excalibur. Gotcha!
Come on! I just responded. I responded.
Seriously, this is the most fun that I've ever had with a multiplayer game this year. And as an added bonus, the game is moddable. So the community is expected to come out with some of their custom multiplayer maps within a matter of weeks, in addition to some official ones from Interceptor hopefully. The most notable one is the Quake DM maps being recreated for the game. And unless Interceptor decides to add co-op within the game, we can hope for a mod that can achieve that. It'll probably be within a few months until we see some single player campaigns and everything though, but once that moment comes, the game will be expanded beyond its limits thanks to the community, if all goes well. So, is the new Rise of the Triad worth buying or not? Well, here's the price, $15 US. For a game that is a superb spiritual remake of the original, it's a pretty awesome deal. Now, though the issues as of now do persist in its current state, we'll be expecting a patch that'll hopefully fix them fully for the least, within the next 4 to 5 weeks as of its release. And on the plus side, Interceptor seems to be listening to their customers on the issues, so I have faith in these guys for giving us a better gameplay experience as possible. But aside from that, the game itself is pretty freaking amazing. Awesome gameplay, awesome music, great graphics, and an awesome old-school first-person shooter experience that'll keep you coming back for more and more. Now sure, games like Battlefield are superior as far as realism and the like, but they just don't have that old-school feel, or the creativity and humor like what was put into older games, or even the fact that you're a legitimate badass wielding big guns. So, if you're a fan of the original game, or just want a modern old-school first-person shooter with an absolute sense of humor, then Rise of the Triad Redux is definitely the way to go.